What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Contemplations with Austin West. This is episode 19, day 19 of the 40-day devotional. I cannot believe that we are almost halfway through this thing. Today, I'm going to get a little less spiritual on y'all. You're not allowed to get spiritual. Today, we're going to talk about what I see coming in the future, where I came from, why I believe that things are moving the way they're moving, something that I have been obsessively researching into for the past year and a half. Again, oh, where'd my screen go? My back? Here we go. I am a 1-3 manifesting generator, and my 1 means I'm an investigator. And so anytime something piques my interest, I get obsessed about it. I investigate it. I need to know all of it. There's a shadow in there for any of my 1s out there listening. The shadow of our 1 is we don't think we ever know enough. And so I don't put my voice out there. I don't launch my program. I don't go for the promotion I want, whatever it is, because we don't think that we have enough info yet. We need to research and more books and more podcasts and more this and more that. But the beautiful side of it is we can go into topics like nobody's business. What's that saying? Nobody's business? I've never said that before. It felt weird. Like nobody else. And today, shout out Brent Newman, one of my best friends and brothers in this life. He's one of those guys that we might talk every, 6 to 8 weeks. And every time we do, it's like I talked to him yesterday. Love that guy so much. When I got out of that last relationship, I went out, like 3-4 days after the breakup. I went and flew to Hawaii, and he put me up for 3 weeks and held the fuck out of some space because I was definitely in it. And just got a lot of love for you, bro. And he submitted a topic on XRP/finance. So I'm going to riff about that today. And this isn't about XRP on its own. I'm going to talk about the greater financial ecosystem, what I think is happening right now. I think a lot of the chaos in the world that we're experiencing is a direct measure to distract us away from what's really going on behind the scenes, which is we are witnessing the collapse of the financial realm. Everything that we once knew is falling and failing. And I think that although there's truth to these things, there's no accident in the symbolism of everything coming out at the same time. The Epstein files, the aliens, the war, all of this is to distract away from the greatest transfer of wealth the world will ever know. It's happening right now. It's been being built for almost 2 decades now. And everything going on behind the scenes, and people barely know about it because the news of it gets washed under the waves of all the other chaos that we're seeing in the world. But how do people stay in power? Money. How do politicians stay in power? Money. Why do we go to war? Money. What is the thing that keeps people in the frequency of fear? Money. What is people's greatest wound? Scarcity. What does that have to do with? Money. Root chakra, safety, groundedness, presence. What does it have to do with? Money. I can go on and on. We all know it. Most of us have or have experienced some sort of money story because money is really what runs the world. And there's all these deep-seated myths around it. One of the greatest myths, and this is why I know. Nah, I'm not even going to go down that road. I got to do a podcast on religion soon. I keep speaking of things, and I don't want my perspective of it to be painted in the light that's incomplete. So I'll do a whole podcast on that. Anyways, like these stories that we've been told, like money is the root of all evil. Bullshit. I talked about the Frequency of Money podcast. Debt is the frequency of abundance, but we have been taught to fear debt, so we fear abundance. We've been taught that money is the root of all evil, so we push away of it. right? We learn to hate the people with money because we think it's the thing that's evil. And we create the separation between us and wealth, us and what nature represents, which is abundance. And because nature is abundant, we are abundant. My beingness, I have trillions and trillions of cells and viruses and bacteria alive in my body right now, keeping me alive in every single moment of every single day. I am literally made of abundance. And so when the powers that be, I call it the negative polarity, when they have control of the money, they have control of the systems and the populace and the opinions. Why do you think media is all fear porn? Money. They're bought and paid for. What is the thing that makes politics as gross as it does? Lobbying. What's that rooted in? Money. I can go on and on. I'm not going to. You get the point at this point. But let's start from the beginning. I went to school for finance. I was a finance major with a degree, I almost called it a semi-degree. What is it called? A minor. Majored in finance, minored in marketing. And coming out of college, I got a job at JP Morgan. Here's the irony of going to school for finance. I went to a top 30 business school, worked in finance for almost 12 years, just under 12 years. And I never once utilized any of the shit I learned in school. I think college is mostly bullshit these days. They've sold us a lie that didn't end up panning out in the way that we've been taught, which is why student loan debt is over $1 trillion and people can't pay that shit back because it was never meant to be. And there's a lot of indoctrination inside of all of that. But again, I don't want to spin too far off topic. I go to school for finance. I graduate. I start working at JP Morgan. And by 24 years old, was I 20? Yeah, I think I was 24. By 24 years old, I was the youngest branch manager in the West region. So about a sixth of the entire Chase company was the West region. I can't remember the exact region. Shit ton of banks. And I was the youngest branch manager by like 4 years. Worked my way up quick. In less than 2 years, I went from a banker, and then I got my investment licenses. I had my Series 6, 7, 63, 66. I think I had my 9 and one other one, 24. I was getting these licenses. As a banker, if you wanted to make money off investments with your clients, you just need your 6 and 63. If you wanted to sell securities, go the financial route and you need your 7 and 66. If you wanted to go into the management side of any of that, you needed your 9 and another one. Man, it's been so long now. How long ago was that? We're in 2026. 14 years? 13 years ago I did all this. And so by 24, I had a great resume. Got promoted, working at floating branches in Arizona. Then I got promoted to the Point Loma branch in SeaWorld, packed up my life, moved out to San Diego to keep working for Chase out there. I was managing the third largest book of business in all of San Diego. Hundreds and hundreds of $1 million under management at that branch, private client branch. And retail banking sucked. Let me tell you what, I got a lot of stories there. I got a funny, you know what? Let me see. I'm going to read this real quick. I think I have this saved in a folder, so this is so good. Bear with me, y'all. This is going to be worth it. I hope I saved this. Keepers? Isn't that help? Oh, it is. All right. So there's this one day I was working, and we'd always get these satisfaction survey reviews because they had effective bonuses and stuff. This is a Q2 2016. I get this review sent into the branch. And back in that day, so in a matter of 6 months, Chase fired all assistant managers nationwide. They were the ones who ran all operations, tellers, everything in the branch. So I had to become the branch manager and assistant branch manager, take over all operations, and then they cut our hours by 30% of the branch, skeleton crews. So I was a teller, branch manager, assistant branch manager. It was a nightmare. I was working like 60 hours a week, 6 days every single week. And so this review is referring to me, even though it says teller in here. I was just being a teller that day when I was working because we were short-staffed. This fucktard, hipster, bearded teller called me boss. Boss? Really? What a douchebag tool. All these people in there, except the blonde German lady and the sweet brunette with glasses, can be better suited working at a Seattle coffee shop. Fire them all. They're all tools. They're all douches. The douche with the beard, the biggest of them all. It's so good. I used to call people boss. Oh, what a flashback. Where was I? Yeah, so I started working at Chase. Did that for a while, and then after 5.5 years of being in banking, I kept wanting to go to the security side of it. I was in JP Morgan retail, wanted to go to the financial investment side of the bank. Ended up getting fired because I failed an audit. What a blessing. Took this job in non-QM mortgages, doing $1 million to $25 million residential mortgages, and that really started the back end of my last 6 years working in finance in a various different ways, in a lot more private equity side. It's hard to, I don't want to explain what non-QM is and the people we worked with and how all of that worked, but and then I did that for 3-4 years, and then I jumped over into retail mortgages as well. So I worked in finance for a long time, and I got to understand markets and how money worked and how it moved and rates and what the Fed's role is and what fiat is and all of it. And essentially, one of the hardest things in September 2022, I had a panic attack when I logged into my email one day. I was managing a team in the mortgage business, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I logged in and my body gave out. It was like 6 months after I did ayahuasca, and I'm like, fuck this, dude. I cannot do this anymore. And I quit my job on the spot. I fell to the floor. It was like a 45-minute episode. I was crying. I was shaking. It was like the worst anxiety. A panic attack. If anybody's had one, you know how bad those are. That was like my 6th one up until that point. So I kept having these, and because I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to the ping and the whisper. I was ignoring it. I was ignoring that I wanted to quit and I hated my job. But I just bought a brand new build $1 million condo, plus or minus 10 minutes from the beach in San Diego. I was driving an $80,000 custom BMW. My mortgage was over $7,000 a month. My BMW was $1,400 a month. And that doesn't count all the other overhead I had. Utilities and HOA and lifestyle. I mean, I think my monthly nut was like 15 grand. Something wild. Yeah, I had a whole bunch of shit I just didn't need back then. And so the panic attack was a result of realizing that I was working a job that I hated, that was sucking my soul to death. But I had to keep working it to sustain this life that I'd built around it, to mask and numb the fact that I didn't like what I was doing. The toys and the brand new build condo, all these fancy things were just mechanisms to numb from how much I didn't enjoy my life. And it ended up being the biggest blessing, because I ended up 6 weeks or so later, I put my house up for sale, sold it after a few months, ended up making a couple $100,000, I think like $240,000, which allowed me to quit and spend 2 years trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And in that 2 years, started a couple companies in the psychedelic space and started to really, really go all in on Entheos. So that was September 2022. I left finance. I got into finance in 2011. So yeah, I was in it for a while. So that's my background. I kind of wanted to preface that before I go into this, because I do understand these markets. I lived in it for a long time. At one point, I owned over 40 stocks. I used to trade. And this is why I look at what's happening in the world right now, and I know that we are on the precipice. It could be in 2 days. It could be 2 months. It could be, I don't think, any longer than a year. I don't know how it would last longer than a year. They've propped this thing up for a wild amount of time based on all the data I'm looking at. And nothing on here is financial advice. I think I need to emphasize that. And I'm not saying any of this to instill fear. This is about preparing ourselves. These things they happen in waves. It happened in one of the waves of 2020, 2012, 2008, 2001, 96, 89. Like, these things happen over and over. We have big crashes, mini crashes, corrections. The entire financial system is manipulated. But what we're witnessing right now, you guys know I'm a big believer in symbolism. The U.S. dollar has lost 99% of its value since it left the gold since we stopped using gold to back its value, the gold standard. There's a lot of symbolism in something being 99% complete, which is what that represents to me. The world reserve currency is the US dollar. It is the what oil is traded in, which is essentially what makes it the world reserve currency. But the problem with fiat is you can just print more and more and more and more, and so you debase your income. It loses value. Inflation, they have sold us that inflation is normal. Inflation is not normal. Inflation is the tax we pay for them to continue printing more and more money. And here's what happens. They print money. Let's use 2008, for example. They print a fuck ton of money, and then all this money floods into these different assets, which values the assets or increases the value of the assets, which makes more people rich, and then they lend against that asset to pour more liquidity in the system. And then you have some sort of catalyst, like the mortgage market in 2008. All these mortgage-backed securities that ended up failing. I'm not going to go into that whole story. Watch The Big Short, one of my favorite movies ever. It's so good. That explains everything that happened back then. And then the whole thing falls. And because it falls and it fails, we, quote, bail them out, which is just the printing of more money that goes back into sustaining these companies that are the people that caused the problem in the first place, which gets pumped more into assets, which increase asset valuations again. Richer gets richer, poorer gets poorer, and they start the cycle all over again. There's going to come a point, which I think we're at, where that system falls. It collapses. Fiat is not real money. It's monopoly money, and they keep printing more and more, and we're in $40 trillion of debt. Tax revenue does not even cover the interest payments. Or is that the right? Yeah, whatever it is. Like our interest is now more than the military budget. It's wild. It's you go down that rabbit hole, you get lost in that. If you really want to go deep down it, start with the Jekyll Island. Going back to the 1920s, I think it is, where a lot of these things were put in place. A lot of this is planned out so far in advance, y'all. So far in advance. Anyway, I look at what's happening in the world today, and I'm mapping this from astrology. I'm mapping this from my knowledge in the finance space. I'm mapping this from what I'm seeing actualized in the world and what's happening right now. I'm mapping this from prophets and channelers that I do trust in. And when I look at it from all of these angles, it's pointing to the same thing. We are in the middle of the greatest transfer of wealth the world will ever know. And we have an opportunity to be part of that transfer inside of this. And so here's what's happening. Fiat is failing. It's collapsing. And when we go into the next financial world, the next financial realm, it's not like after the U.S. fails the experiment of being the fiat. In fiat, I think the U.S. dollar is at 94 years being the world reserve currency. Every single reserve currency or primary currency going back thousands of years has an average life of 90 to 120 years. We're right in that period. This is, again, cycles. They repeat. When this fiat system fails and the U.S. dollar is no longer propped up as the world reserve currency, it's not like everybody's going to be like, okay, China, you're next. You get the printer this time. Let's go back to that. It's not going to happen. And we are moving, when I look at the astrology of the age we're moving into, Aquarius, it is all about decentralization. It is about trustless systems. It is about authenticity. Another word I use for authenticity is utility. When you are authentic, you have a utility, you're utilized, you're valuable. And this is what brings in these digital currencies. There's no accident that the age of Aquarius is about decentralization and we have all these decentralized currencies that we're bringing into this new earth. There's no accident in any of that. And yeah, I don't know how deep I want to go on this because it's like doing a show resources. I'm just going to cover the surface. And if people have more questions, maybe I do another one. We're witnessing the greatest transfer of wealth the world has ever known. And here is my opinion. The new financial realm is going to be based on a trustless system. Trust is built into the system of decentralization. And when I look at the new financial world, when everything goes digital, if you think of money right now, it is the only thing that is not on the internet. We're still using the SWIFT system, the SWIFT messaging system to transfer money throughout the world. And that was built in, I believe, 1962. Think about how wild that is. Everything is on the internet today, except for money, except for the actual and literal transition of the liquidity through markets. It takes 3 to 7 days, depending on where you're sending money anywhere in the world. It doesn't look like that on front because they have all these Novo Vostro accounts as 27 trillion tied up in capital based on the bank and your history with them. Sometimes they free up capital within these accounts to give you access to your money before. That's kind of what Zelle and Venmo are. That money doesn't land immediately on the other side. You build trust with these platforms, so they front the money, and then they trust your bank on the back end that they will receive the money inside that 24 to 72 hour period. That's where if you go to like Venmo or something, it's like, do you want a normal transfer, 1 to 3 business days for free? Or do you want to pay a fee because they take the risk of that to get it instantly? So they front it to you instantly for that fee because of what it costs them on the back end. Money is very, very slow to move in the world right now. And so I'm gonna lay down some of the technologies that I'm invested in. When I'm looking at the future, again, not financial advice. When I look at the future of the financial system, I'm looking at the integrity of the system. And when I think the integrity, I think the foundation. And when we look at the new world, I'm looking at what are the rails? What is the literal foundation that the new financial system is going to be built off of? And there's so many things to take into account here. It's about approvals, licenses, the people involved with these companies, how long they've been around, what the technology represents, what does the technology solve for, what is the 50-year scope of the technology. If we imagine that the next implementation of the financial system only has about 100 years, what is the scope of that technology over the next 100 years? Is it deflationary, or is it the new system I don't believe will be very inflationary. Most of these currencies are deflationary by nature. They burn a part of the token that's used. Some people call these gas fees. It doesn't really, none of that really matters. But from my perspective, when I'm witnessing what's happening in the world right now, the financial world and the global economy, is I cannot see how this system perpetuates. And the new system is already born. And the new system maps to the frequency of the astrology age that we're entering into. This is also why I'm not a believer, and I'll get a lot of pushback. I'm not a believer in Bitcoin. When I feel into the frequency of it, I'm not a believer in it. It doesn't have utility. People say it's a store of value. It is one of the most volatile assets ever. That is not a store of value. Definitionally, it's not a store of value. It is slow. It is insanely energy expensive and intensive. And we're moving into the part of the astrology that we're moving into. There's also these things called yuga cycles. Maybe I'll do a podcast on the yuga cycles. We're moving into the age of Dwapara, which is the age of energy. That's what it represents. We're exiting the age of Kali. I haven't studied the yugas in about a year and a half. Whatever age we're leaving, Kali, yeah, is about materialism. It's about, look at the last 2,400 years. It's all about material, science. The only thing that exists is this realm. There is no God. Like, we leave spirituality. It's the lowest vibration yuga cycle that we're in. And we're entering into the age of Dwapara, which is the age of energy. And then you go into Treta Yuga, which is the age of thought. And then you go into why can't I think of these? The final cycle, which is the age of consciousness. And so the technologies in these ages represent, it's like I have this theory that the Yuga cycle, all these technologies are always representative of what's possible and capable. So right now in the age of materialism, we need a phone to do what in the age of energy we're going to be able to do with different frequencies and energy systems, which in the age of thought we're going to be able to do with our mind and things like this. Again, don't want to get too spun up in that. But everything represents this new age that we're entering into. And so when I feel into the frequency of Bitcoin, when I look at the voices that represent it, that like the frequency of the loudest voices that represent it, that tells me everything I need to know. Everything is symbolism, y'all. Michael Saylor, for those that you don't know, is a crook, and he's the loudest voice for this thing in the world. That tells me everything I need to know. Not to mention, I don't believe in the utility. It doesn't have a utility. Not to mention, it's not a store of value. Not to mention, it's slow. Not to mention, it's insanely expensive. Now, with that being said, I do own a small amount. But what I'm looking at is investing into the infrastructure of the new system. Again, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I'm just taking my information from channelers and prophets and astrology and my experience in the financial system and a year and a half of study and many people I trust. And I'm looking at this thing, and we're moving into a model and a system where I think there's going to be, there's going to be many winners in the new financial age, probably 50 to 100 different cryptos, because all of them play a different role. A lot of them aren't competing. Most of them aren't competing. But what I'm looking at is the underlying infrastructure. And when I look at the underlying infrastructure, I pair that against not only utility, what is the function they're solving for? What is the actual use case of the technology? I also pair it against what are the institutions that move money around the world saying about it. And a lot of them, they created this thing called the ISO 20222. It's a messaging standard of how money moves through the new system. And there's only like 16 tokens or something. I'm only invested in 5, so I can't remember the whole list, that are certified by all central banks around the entire world, by the EU, by America, by Australia, by Southeast Asia, by China. And so it's like, sometimes it's so obvious people miss it. Sometimes it's so in your face, but we get in our silos and we don't want to see the thing for what it is that we miss what's there. And I could be wrong too. That's why this is not financial advice. I'm just telling you guys where I'm at. I am heavily invested into these technologies, and I refused it, regardless of my financial situation in life. I refuse to touch these because I honestly believe the wealth that will be generated because of this transfer, future generations of my bloodline will never have to worry about finances again. I am that deeply of a believer in this. So I refuse to touch this. I will figure out other means no matter what happens in my life because I refuse to touch these investments. I put them inside of a trust, so technically they're not even mine anyway. I mean, they're my trust, but that trust will carry on to my wife and my kids and my future generations, and we'll be here to serve Entheos and pour into missions and bless up people in my life. I'm kind of rambling. There's so much I can say on this topic. There's so much I can go into, but I'll just get to what I'm invested in. XRP, XLM, XDC, SHX, VLO, I have some tokenized gold. I think I'm missing one. And ZBEC, ZBCN. I'm mainly just going to talk on XRP for the next 3 minutes here. I believe that XRP is one of the most valuable investments anybody can make right now. Again, not financial advice. This is my personal opinion. I have a lot of close friends with me that disagree. I have a lot of friends that believe Bitcoin's the way. I don't believe Bitcoin is being used for what it is. I believe that it is one of the most incredible decentralized models that the new internet should be built off of. It's not a currency. It's not a value. That's not what its use case is. That's not why it's valuable. But I believe XRP is going to lead to an incredible amount of wealth and prosperity in the new world. And I believe that's happening sooner than later. I'm very, very profoundly strong believer in that. When you look at people that work for the U.S. Treasury on their board, when you look at what the technology represents, what it solves for, how it's a neutral bridge currency that bridges every single potential currency and stablecoin around the world in a trustless, decentralized way that moves value in any amount in 3 seconds for a fraction of a penny. We're solving for money transfer, for trustless, for decentralized, for the energy intensive. It is one of the most cheap sources of money movement the world has ever created. It solves for a global liquidity crisis, which is liquidity is the issue we go into every major economic crisis in the first place. On and on and on and on. I created a document. It's like a 20-page document, my case for XRP. I haven't updated it in probably 3 months, but if you guys are interested, maybe I'll drop that in too. But what I know is true is that we are heading into the new world. And the new world is going to be built on completely new rails. I believe that one day we're going to wake up and everything is going to be different. You know, AI, the agentic economy, they're going to start using these financial rails. And they can't use something that's slow and expensive, and they're going to need something that's trustless and permissioned and decentralized. When AI really starts kicking off, when the agentic economy starts kicking off, when the current financial system collapses, when fiat is no longer trusted, and when the world looks for a neutral bridge so it can continue to transact within each other without giving one country the reins of being able to print their own currency into oblivion, they're going to look to something new. And this is my perspective on what some of that new stuff is. And if you just look in the news today, every single day there is wild news, which tells me something's coming. You know, a couple years ago, we might have gotten some big news every 3 to 6 weeks. One thing would pop up. I'm talking about daily. This bank here and that approval and this license. And one thing about XRP is the company that represents them, Ripple, they hold more financial licenses worldwide than JP Morgan Chase, the largest bank in America and one of the top 5 largest banks in the world. That's fucking wild to me. I can go on and on. People have their opinions. I'm looking at infrastructure. I'm looking at this from the perspective of what institutions require in order to turn these technologies on. I'm not looking at this from the standpoint of, yes, I want sovereignty and all those things as well, but we're fighting uphill when it comes to that. And so it's about being able to work with the system to create your freedom, not fight against it and hoping you find your freedom. I'm going to leave that one here for now. This feels complete. I'm already at 30 minutes. I know I went a lot of different ways, and I'm happy to keep diving in if there's some follow-up needed. But thank you, Brent, for the submission. This one is fun. And I'll let y'all tell me where you want to go from here. Love y'all. Appreciate you being here. See you tomorrow. I'm actually going to record back-to-back right now because I got a whole event on tomorrow. So just a little heads up. Anyways, peace out, y'all. Happy 4th.